Hey y'all, this is Culture Soup, where tech, culture, and business collide. It's a podcast that spoons up everything hot from social media. I'm your host, L. Michelle Smith, and each episode we bring you some of the most notable and not yet notable thought leaders in tech, business, and culture. The year was 2019, and there I was sitting in the office, a swank office of an officer at the big company where I was working. And I had just received, only days before, a surplus notice. And that's a kind of humane way of saying layoff. But they would give you 60 days to see if there were other positions within the company if you wanted to stay. As I was sitting there in the officer's office, we were discussing the options to stay, which was a compliment in and of itself. But the night before, I remembered something, and that was that I had made a list of 6 things that I wanted to accomplish when I was about 23 years old, 22, something like that. I was in graduate school. And there were 6 things that I wanted to achieve that I didn't necessarily have the credentials, the credibility, the contacts, all the C's to pull off at that age. Well, I realized sitting in that office that I had achieved at least four of the things on the list. And I realized that I wanted to take a shot. Welcome to the coaching corner episode of the Culture Suit podcast. And we are live today in my home studio. Haven't done this in a very, very long time, probably pre-pandemic. But now LinkedIn has some new functionality that allows me to let my community know that I'm about to go live. And now we're on Facebook. Some of you are there. Shout out to folks in Facebook. People are on Twitter right now. Other folks are watching on YouTube. But today we're going to talk about goal getters and how goal getters design their life. Now, that story that I shared with you is from the first chapter of my book, No Thanks, 7 Ways to Say. I'll just include myself, the first edition and the second edition, which is called the Remix. You can get that anywhere worldwide. But I shared that story to tee up the idea that I was already writing down my dreams even when I was in grad school. Now, I had no clue then that dreams can actually become goals and goals can actually become real plans. And it wasn't until that point that I realized I had ticked off many of my goals. And that was the triggering decision that I would make to just leave the company and see what opportunities were out there for me despite not having a job. I know a lot of people would be really afraid of that. But let me tell you, if you design your life, and you can do that. In other words, move with intention and put some plan and action behind your goals, barring the unforeseen, and sometimes the unforeseen is just delays, you can too reach your goals and smash them. So we're going to be talking about that today. I actually made it through all 6 of those items within a year of leaving the company. And I'll talk a little bit more about my story throughout this show, but you're also encouraged to get that book. Listen, one of my team members is in the chat. She's going to be chatting with you on LinkedIn in the comments, on Twitter in the feed, and also on Facebook in the comments on both the Culture Suit podcast and my business page, L. Michelle Smith. And she's going to make sure that we're putting up the links that you need to the references that I make throughout this session. Shout out to NECA and all of her hard work. She always backs me with my social and digital. And we have a live studio audience right now. And if somebody wants to talk, we're going to be calling on them. They're in the green room right now. So before we get started, I want to remind you of the Rockstar leadership tips of the day that I do every week. You will see them on Tuesday most often. And this is where I share tidbits and advice around leadership and getting to your goals. There was one most recently where we talked about goals and how to measure them, because a lot of times When we set our goals, we might do it for our employer, we may do it for our clients, setting goals and strategies and tactics, but rarely do we do it for ourselves. Goals and plans don't matter. Actions don't matter unless we can measure them. And here are some tips on how to do that. Look, I'm proud of you. You've been dreaming. In fact, you've written those dreams down and now they're goals. How do you know that you've accomplished them? Let me tell you about measurement. It's your Rockstar leadership tip of the day. And how do you measure? You need to either qualify your results or quantify your results. We're going to borrow from research for a second. And qualifying your goal means that you're going to set up qualifications or areas that you check off to know that you're making it to where you're wanting to go. If you're going to quantify them, you're going to put numeric counters there. So let's look at the diet. You want to lose 10 pounds? 10 is your quantitative measure. And you're able to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 count those pounds. Qualitative measures may be that you want to fit better in your clothes or you want to feel better. Those are categories that you want to check off and know that you've hit the mark. So listen, qualify or quantify in order to measure your goals and know that you've smashed them. I'll see you online. All right. So listen, we are talking about goal setting and measures, and it's so important that even throughout this show, you are journaling. Pick up your journal, and I'm going to ask you some questions that will allow you to think through and strategize your plan for smashing your goals. And on the screen right now, you'll see that I have a journal that we're about to publish that's based on these rockstar leadership tips. It's called Slay Every Day 52 Weeks to Rockstar Leadership. And listen, we measure everything in this journal. You have a tip that I'm going to share at the very beginning of your week. You're going to actually think about the coaching question and then map out your plan. And you are going to measure those goals and you're going to use the measurement of the SMART goal paradigm, okay? So, of course, it's specific, it's measurable, it's actionable, it's realistic, and it's time bound, okay? And we're going to have a midweek check in and we're going to have an end of the week check in. And whatever happens at the end of that week throughout the assignments that you did during the week, you're going to adjust your goals for the following week. This is a journal that actually works for you, and it's going to be ready and released on January 1, 2022. I'm very happy to bring that to you. So, I want to challenge you today on a goal that you may have for yourself. In fact, I'm going to stretch you like I do my clients, and I ask them not just what they want to do this year when it comes to their leadership aspirations and their lives. I ask them the following question, and this is based on the Design Your Life series that you're beginning to see every Thursday on LinkedIn and Instagram and YouTube, where I pose a journaling question. So I encourage you, take out your journals and answer this question. I have a journaling prompt for you today. Let's think about the future. Here's the question. In 5 years, what does your life look like? Now ask yourself, what one step can you take this week to make that dream a reality? If you want to work through designing. All right. So the question is, what does your life look like in 5 years? And listen, this is what you want your life to look like. And it's not just professional, because we understand that professional and personal lives, that's a myth. It's all one person, because we know that your professional life impacts your personal life and vice versa. And the pandemic has taught us. All of that converged under one roof for so many of us. when we had homeschool with kids. I know I did. Maybe you did too. And maybe you had folks you were taking care of, elderly parents, but then you were also working from home too. For some of those with school age children, some of them were trying to share the Wi Fi, even were trying to share the devices to get the work done. And you found yourself trying to, hush the doggy while you were on a conference call or a Zoom call. You understand that personal and professional are all one. So I challenge you to think of the life you want to be living in 5 years. No contingencies. Don't think, well, if this happens, then maybe. No, I want you to claim what it is you want to do. Be bold about it. Write it down and think about how you want to be living. Whether it's at work where you might want to be at a certain level, making a certain amount of money, and then maybe it's about you want to take more family time, leisure time, vacation time. Let's be specific. And that's what that question really challenges us to do. Be as detailed as possible, because if you don't see it, you can't say it. And I'm challenging you to write it down, because research shows that those goals that you write down have a better chance of coming true and actually happening. So take a little time and journal and write what it is you want to be doing and what you want your life to look like in 5 years. That's going to be the basis to backtrack and to begin to plan your life. Year by year, you're going to set some goals there. Month by month, you're going to set some goals every month, week by week. And you know what? The final question that I'm going to ask you is, what can you do today to begin your journey towards that 5 year goal? Let's think about that. And let's go to the next prompt. I have a journaling prompt for you again today. Follow along, grab your journals. Here's the question. What would you do if you weren't afraid? Be honest. Understand what it is you're afraid of. Okay, that's a good one. So, as you were thinking about that 5 year plan and breaking it down into year by year by year, chances are there was something that made you afraid, hesitant, or something to write down your goals and really claim them. Listen, we get stuck, and fear is one of the major culprits that gets us stuck. Because, for instance, I'm a mom in chief. I have a little girl. It's just us. But do I allow that to be the contingency or the fear for my dreams? Some of us do. Anything that might presumably be a limitation can be a source of a fear. Money is also a source of fear. If you wanted to start your own business, so many folks that are, say, in corporate have that 9 to 5 job right now. One of their biggest concerns is, where will I get health insurance, or how will I pay my bills? The way you attack fear is with planning and with information. So, the first thing you might want to do is ask yourself, what am I afraid of? Then ask yourself, why am I afraid of it? Then uncover what those things might be. Then I challenge you to go find out the real answers and get some contingencies. So, for instance, when my clients ask me, gee, I would love to start a business, but I'm just really concerned about health insurance. You know what I ask them? What do you believe that all the small business owners out there do when it comes to health insurance? Then there's a long pause. And then they say, well, they probably get some insurance. Wow. So that would imply that you need to make enough money to buy the insurance on your own. And then what you want to do is find out how much money you have to make that happen. You see how this works? You ask that question, you find out the answers, and then you make a plan to chip away at it. That's the best way to address your fears. Let's go to the next prompt. Hey, it's time again for the NSC Journal prompt of the week. Here's the question. Get your journals ready. What is the one step that you can take today that would put you this much closer to your goal? You know, it's important to put action behind your goals. And you don't have to boil the ocean. You can take baby steps, and they go a long way to the finish line. Listen, if you're wanting to design your life, baby steps. Baby steps. So some of you know, many of you know, if you read the book or you just follow me on social media, you have seen that I've written a lot about how this business got started, the one that I'm running today. I am a serial entrepreneur. I have run businesses before. In fact, I had an agency that was award winning for about a decade. But this business started while I was still working for the big company. And it started with this podcast, the very first thing, and a lot of content creation. And one of the main questions that I received often was, how do you do it? How do you make time to put the show together and also travel for your job? Because I was on the road all the time, not just speaking, but actually doing the job. And then they knew I was a mom in chief. The question was, how do you do it? And this is how I did it. I made sure that there were these little windows of time, whether it was 15 minutes or 20 minutes. 30 minutes was great, it was a luxury. But I would find those little pockets of time and I would commit to doing one thing to move my business forward. In some cases it was I would just read a blog. I might listen to a podcast, something that would get me smart and upskill about podcasting. I would study what other people were doing. I'd listen to other podcasts. I would talk to podcast mentors. I have one of those. And I took little baby steps. And you know what? This is why the tortoise beat the hare at the race. The hare was out the gate, pooh, going fast, right? But that tortoise was steady as she goes, step by step by step. That's right. Baby steps. So, what step, baby step, can you make today to get you to that dream that you mapped out for 5 years from now? One step. Is it something that you can learn more about? Is it something that you could plan? Is there a certification that you could get, register for? Think about it. We're going to smash some goals together. Here's prompt number 4. It's time again for the journaling prompt from NSC. Get your journals ready. It's all a part of Design Your Life. What do you need to let go of in order to advance toward your goal? That's the question of the day. You know, this could be anything that's tangible or intangible. It could be a person, an idea, maybe even a place or thing. Jot it down. What's holding you back? What's holding you back? What's holding you back? Now, we already talked about fear. That's one thing. What's another thing that could hold you back? Maybe you have a knowledge gap. Maybe there's something you need to learn. Maybe you realize you want to jump to another industry and you need to understand what that industry is all about. Now, we as women, you know how we can be. We might look at a job description and decide we have to know all of those things in order to go for that job. But let me tell you, of course, you know, the research says the men don't do that, right? So we're going to think like Jim for a second, and we're going to look and see that we have 40% of the qualifications. But then you might be asking, what do I do with that other 60%? First of all, it's a growth opportunity, okay? If you have 100% of the qualifications of a job going into it, let me break it to you, my sister, you are overqualified. You need to stretch yourself, okay? But you need to commit to how you're going to close those gaps. Are you a quick learner? That's good. You're going to need that. And I'm talking to the Eagles here. These are the Eagles that are the leaders, the transformational leaders, the folks that are going to run to the risk and mitigate and instigate change. Okay. I'm not talking to folks that are afraid of change. Okay. I'm talking to you eagles out there. All right. So maybe you decide that you're going to be a quick learner, but then you're going to actually figure out what are the steps to actually close the gaps. And you're going to use the SMART paradigm. Okay. Is it specific? You got to make it specific. Is it measurable? You need to think of all the words and the acronyms that are going to keep you on the road. Is it realistic? Listen, I need to address this right now. We live in an age where the internet has seduced so many people in the area of entrepreneurship that it's an easy thing. And I'm here to tell you, it is absolutely not. Trust me, I've done it a few times. Okay. And it takes work. But what we're seeing in the news feeds isn't the work, it isn't the grind. Okay. And we are seeing folks trying to hopscotch from 0 to 100 with an Instagram post. And let me tell you, it's not sustainable. You've got to learn the craft. You've got to become excellent in it, and you've got to understand who your audience is, who you serve, and they need to understand your one thing, your solution. And they need to be able to spit it back at you. And guess what? That takes time and consistency. Nothing happens overnight, but guess what? It does happen. Some of the best and the most exciting success stories start from ground zero. They start from somewhere. Don't be afraid just to start. Now, this is the time that I'm going to dedicate to taking your Q&A. And if there are folks in the studio audience in the green room that want to shoot me questions or even come on camera, let me know and we'll take those. Let's see, I can't see the feeds right now, comments or reactions. And let's see, I'm going to. All right. If not, we're going to keep moving. I'm going to call somebody out. Okay. I have another coach on the line. She's one of my favorite coaches for a few different reasons. I won't enumerate them all. She is a diversity coach, okay? So she is out there not just consulting with the companies that are trying to get a more inclusive environment, but she's also coaching diversity, equity, and inclusion professionals and those people who are grappling with accepting and being more diverse and creating an environment that would be more fitting for those who want to be belong. Okay. Her name is Sasha Thompson. She is on LinkedIn a lot. And I just kind of want to call her up if that's okay. Sasha, can you unmute yourself?
Hey, Michelle, how are you?
Hey, Sasha, I'm good. And you know what? I'm so glad to see you here. And I love Bob, by the way. It looks great. As we went through these prompts, anything come to mind about goal setting? And I know you have a story too.
It's so funny because one of the programs that I'm working on right now, like you've touched every single point, right, in that program around, knowing your limitations and getting past those and knowing how to use your network to help you get past those things. The SMART goals and making sure that, they're measurable and they're specific. So yeah, I mean, I think it's, I'm just writing stuff down like, yep, yep, yep. There's nothing there that, I haven't used with my clients too. Right. So spot on.
Okay. So let's talk about your story. How have you implemented goal setting to get where you are? I mean, you left a big company too, and now you're on your own and
Yeah.
you celebrated your first anniversary just this year.
Yeah.
Let's give her
It's
some
been
applause
interesting
too.
in the, yay. The, the reason why I actually came up with this program, the plans, um, was because I did take a step back and look at my journey, right? It was when I was in this situation, when I was in this corporation, figure out, okay, where do I see myself, right, 5 years from now?
Mhm.
And what do I need to do to get there? And so a big part of that was I knew I wanted to continue working with diversity, equity, and inclusion practitioners, but in what capacity?
Right.
And so, having had a few wonderful coaches as role models, I looked into coaching and figuring out, okay, what are some ways that I can coach practitioners or coach people from underrepresented communities with the lens of diversity and inclusion? Um, and so while I was still there, I started working on that certification. I started looking into other ways that I could lean into my network to say, okay, if I was to leave this job, where could I land?
Yeah.
And so really started putting the seeds out there. Hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? Getting feedback. And so it was almost this 360 feedback approach
Yeah.
that I took to make sure I knew, okay, these are my strengths. These are some places where I can grow or partner with someone, right? Because you don't have to have all the answers. And I think that was the biggest part of me understanding this journey is I don't have to wear all the hats.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to learn how to delegate. You have to learn to sit in what brings you joy
Yeah.
or it sparks, your interest, and then lean on others that find joy in these other things. And so that's been kind of a big part of my journey has been discovering that about myself and understanding, okay, you know what? I love this part, not so much that part.
Yeah.
And so who can I partner with or build more skills in that area? So not that I have to do it, but I'm at least informed enough to know when something is going awry if somebody else is
Absolutely.
doing it for
One of
me.
the points that you made that I think is so important, Sasha, is that you have to know yourself. And this is work. It is work that you have to be intentional about and do in order to have that North Star and begin to benchmark what you will and will not do. You agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think, my North Star a year ago was I want to still be in business a year from now. Right. So what
Yeah.
do I need to do in order? Because it's that first year that is that make or break.
Mm-hmm.
And so now my North Star is a little bit different. My North Star is now around how do I scale? How do I take care of balancing personal and professional, even though it's one thing,
Yeah.
so that the business isn't taking up all of my time, right? I did that in corporate. I don't need to do that in my own space. And so
Amen.
what does that look like, right? Like, how can I live the way that I want to more stress free, right? It's not stress less, but it's stress free
Yeah.
in that I enjoy the stress that I'm dealing with now. It's healthy stress
Mm-hmm.
versus the stress that caused me to cut my hair off, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Right. It looks good, by the way. Hey, I see that we have a question on YouTube from Matthew. He's asked if he can ask a question. You can absolutely ask a question. Go ahead and shoot, Matthew. While he gets that in the comments, Sasha, tell us a little bit more about your business and what you do.
so the equity equation is a diversity consulting, facilitation, and coaching firm in the Washington, D.C. area. And I really work with organizations to kind of help them think through what diversity, equity, and inclusion looks like holistically, right? Oftentimes it comes across as this is an HR imperative or initiative, but it's much more than that. My background was in marketing. And so I always looked at it from who's your audience,
Mm-hmm.
who's not being heard, who's not being seen, and how are you showing them that you value them, right? And so I've always kind of looked at it from this 360 viewpoint. And so the most marginalized is always the center of the work that I do. And so I help organizations really think about who's not being heard, right? And bringing those voices up and out. And so I do a lot of work around psychological safety. I have also realized that many companies are talking the language, but don't necessarily understand the definitions.
Wow.
So I start to do a lot of work, just grounding like the foundation
Mm-hmm.
of what is this stuff that we're talking about. When we're talking about identities, what does that even mean?
Mm-hmm.
right? And these are things that people were told not to talk about in the workplace. And so now that we're in 21st century leadership, these are the things that leaders and managers need to be aware of and be comfortable talking about, even if there's a little discomfort in that conversation.
Yeah. You know what? That's all great stuff. And you know what? I want you to tell the viewers and the listeners where they can follow you or reach out to you if they need services like yours.
Yep. So you can always find me on LinkedIn, / Sasha, Sacha Thompson, Thompson. You can find me there, or you can look up the Equity Equation. So www.theequityequationllc.com. And I'm also there on Instagram as the Equity Equation. So,
Fantastic. You know what, Sasha? Thanks for coming to the green room. Thanks for also coming upstage. So you're on the stage with me today having a conversation about goals and goal setting and how it's impacted your life and your business. I appreciate you and I'll see you later, okay?
sounds good.
All righty. So here we are, y'all. We're about to wrap up. A few things that I want to share with you. Some of you may have caught the impromptu live that I did yesterday, all about the making of this book, No Thanks for Girls. 7 ways to say I'm beautiful, strong, and enough. Not by yours truly, but by my baguette, my mini. Joni A. Smith, my little 9-year-old girl, wrote this book. And if you're interested in hearing the story behind the making of this beautiful children's book that is made for kids 6 to 10 years old, and it's around self-esteem, it's anti-bullying, it tells kids and coaches kids on what to do if they don't feel or someone makes them feel like they aren't enough. And she has written 7 vignettes, and she has a little bit of coaching thanks to mommy. I edited the book. We hired an illustrator. It's beautiful. You can get it worldwide. It's also available on Amazon. And you also need to know that we are going to release another book in the No Thanks franchise. And as you know, there is the original edition, there's the remix, which is the second edition of No Thanks, coming in 2022, late spring. Yes, please. 7 ways to say that I'm entitled to the C suite. Okay? All right. You want to get that because it's a follow up, and I'm talking to all sorts of heavies in this book. The Chief Learning Officer of the Executive Leadership Council, Christopher Butts, the now Chief Experience Officer of the Utah Jazz, formerly of the College Playoff. She is the COO. I'm talking about Andrea Williams. I'm talking to the Chief Impact Omnicom, Emily K. Graham. Look, I've lined them up, okay? Plus, there's more storytelling from me, some very practical advice and tips, and of course, the coaching that comes with it. We're also going to be putting the online course on sale this holiday, so be looking for that. And if you want to find out more about that, NECA is putting those links in the chat on all of the platforms. So, listen, this is the end of our show. I would love to stay in contact with you. Let's see if I can get that slated for you. I am accessible on all the platforms. Of course, I'm on LinkedIn. There we go.
The Culture Soup Podcast is a production of No Size Communication, LLC.
The Culture Soup Podcast is a registered trademark of No Silos Communications, LLC.